When reading a book, do you ever grab a scrap piece of paper or a receipt and stick it in your book as a bookmark? Well, I think it may be time to make some real bookmarks. So today I'm going to show you how to make your own magnetic bookmarks using your Cricut machine. If we're just meeting right now, I'm Nisha. Welcome to Little Craft Nest. The supplies you'll need for today are a Cricut machine and a printer because these will be print and cut bookmarks. You'll also need some cardstock that will feed through your printer, some laminating sheets, and some magnets. And I'm going to show you what type of magnets not to use later in this video. So let's jump onto Cricut Design Space and get started. So the first thing we're going to do is grab some images for our bookmarks. Now I've uploaded a few, so let's go ahead and grab those. We're going to use these books and this cowboy boot here, or cowgirl boot, and this smiley face. And then let's click Add to Canvas. Now if you don't know how to upload designs to Cricut Design Space, you can go watch my video on how to do that. Or you can simply choose images that are already on Design Space. It doesn't matter what image you use, you should be able to make a bookmark with it. So I'm going to shrink these down a little bit here. And here we go. You'll notice this cowboy boot loaded a lot bigger than the other images. And that's because this image is a higher quality image. Sometimes when you're using higher quality images in Design Space, don't be surprised if it slows down any of the operations that you're using within Design Space because of the quality of your image. Let's start off with this smiley face here because this is going to be our simplest design. We want to turn this into a magnetic bookmark, so we need it to be two-sided. So we're going to duplicate this smiley face by going above our Layers panel and clicking on Duplicate. And we'll bring this above our other smiley face here. And then we're going to go up to the top and under Flip, we're going to flip this vertically. And now we have an upside down happy face. That's because we're going to end up folding our bookmark, and so it'll look upside right once this is folded. Let's go over to Shapes and grab a square, and we'll bring this over here as well. Now go up to the top under Size and unlock your square so that we can distort it into a rectangle. So we're just making a little tab here that goes between both our images and connects them. This is going to connect our bookmark together. Now, since this is going to be a print and cut image, you don't want to leave your rectangle gray, which is the automatic color that Design Space uses. You'll want to pick a color that you want your bookmark to be. So you could choose white, or maybe you want one of these other colors that are already in your design. So you can go ahead and go to Advanced and maybe find a pinky purple color that you think suits your design. Now in terms of the width of your tab, that's really up to you. You can make it really fat, you can make it skinnier. That is just a personal preference. In terms of length of our rectangle here, you want to keep in mind that you will be folding this in half. So you don't want to have too much access, but you also don't want your design to be too close together. Now let's click on our rectangle and we're going to go up to Arrange and Send to Back. You want to make sure that your tab is behind both your images. Now, when I'm looking at my tab here, I feel like my designs are still a little close to each other, so I'm going to separate these just a little more. Now, go ahead and select all those layers, both the happy faces and the rectangle, and we're going to go up to Align, and we're going to center this horizontally. Now that everything is in place and we have all those layers selected, we can go down to the bottom right-hand corner and click on Flatten. And you'll notice in the Layers panel that all our different layers have now become one layer, and this is now a print and cut image. Now this bookmark looks rather large, so we can shrink it down a little bit. And again, it's up to you how big or how small you decide to make your designs. So there is our first bookmark. Now let's work on our pile of books right here. You'll notice that this design has text on it. So we're going to do something a little different with this design. we're going to start off the same way. We're going to duplicate our image. We're going to put it on top, and then we are going to flip it. So you'll notice that all the text for the image we just flipped is all backwards, but that's okay. We're not going to keep this as the back of our bookmark, but I'm going to show you what we're going to do. So first, let's go over and make a tab again by going over to shapes and grabbing a square, and we're going to unlock that square and make our rectangle. Let's change the color, and then we're going to send this rectangle under Arrange to the back. Now select those 3 layers. We're going to go to Align and Center. I'm not liking how thick my tab is here, so I'm just going to make that a little smaller first. I'm going to center everything again, and there we go. Now we're going to do an extra step that we didn't do with our first bookmark. We're going to make sure all 3 layers are selected. Then go up to offset, and we are going to bring this offset dot here towards the center. We're just going to make it a little smaller, and then click on apply. So now we've made an offset for all our layers here, and all those offsets have welded together. But I don't want to keep that black. We're going to make that the same color as our tab. So beside operation, we're going to change that color to that purple color we were using. And now what we're going to do is grab those books, and we're actually going to delete that layer. And we're just going to have our back as plain purple. So now we can select our layers. So we have our offset, our rectangle, and our books. And then go down to the bottom right and click on flatten. And here we have our second bookmark, and we can go ahead and make that a little smaller if you want to. Now let's go ahead and work on this cowgirl boot, which is super cute. I really like this image. I got this one from Design Bundles, so if you like this one as well, I will leave it linked down below in the description. So let's go ahead and duplicate this image, put it on top, and we'll separate them a little more, and then we're gonna flip our boot. All right, now let's make our little tab in the middle. And this time I think I want to do the tab in white. So I'm going to change that to white, and we're going to send this tab to the back. All right, that's a little hard to see because my canvas here is white. So we can go down to the bottom right and click on blank canvas, go back up to color, and let's change the color of our screen here to gray. One thing you'll notice about this boot design is that there's a little shadow on the bottom of the boot, which is going to be very tricky to cut out and use as a bookmark. So once again, I want to do an offset for this design. And I also think I'm going to make this tab a little skinnier once again. But before I go and make that offset, let's make sure everything is centered. So we can select all our layers here, go to Align, and click on Center. Now you'll notice that our rectangle is moved over right in between the boots. So we need to move that back again. The important thing is that both our boots are centered with each other. So we can click on that rectangle, and you can manually move it over with your mouse or use the arrow keys on your keyboard and gently nudge that over until you're happy with the placement. And I think that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and select all those layers again, go up to offset, and we're going to make this offset a little smaller. Now, like I said before, because this is a high quality design, it may take a little while for the offset function to work. Sometimes I've waited about 5 minutes for the offset to work when I'm using high quality images, so you just need to be patient. Okay, so that did take about 5 minutes for me to get that offset, but now I can go ahead and move that dial in, and I'm waiting a little bit again. You can see that green line going at the top of my screen. And now we can go ahead and click on apply, and let's change that offset to white. Now we can select all those layers, go down to the bottom right and click on flatten. And I'm going to make this bookmark a little smaller here. Now there's one other thing we can do to our bookmarks to make them easier to fold. We can add a score line. So if we go over to shapes, we can grab the score line. We're going to rotate it 90 degrees. And then you can put it right in the middle of the bookmark, and you can make it a little smaller here. And we want to make sure that's perfectly in the center. So we're gonna select our bookmark and the score line, align and center vertically. And now our score line is right in the middle of our bookmark, so it's gonna be easier to fold. But once again, we need to select both those layers, our score line and our bookmark, go down to the bottom right and click on attach. Now we can go ahead and also add score lines to our other bookmarks. Instead of creating a brand new score line, I'm just gonna select my score line layer in the layers panel and duplicate that twice. And then I can bring that score line over to my bookmarks, and we'll grab the other one here and put it on our happy face bookmark. And then once again, I'm gonna select my bookmark and the score line and center that vertically. And then click on attach. And then we'll do the same thing for the happy face. Align, center vertically, and attach. Now, if you don't want to use a score line, you don't have to. Maybe you don't have a scoring stylus or a scoring wheel. That's okay. You can simply fold your bookmarks manually without the score line. I just like using it so that I know I'm 100% precise with my fold. So now we can go ahead and click on Make It. Now before you go and press continue, go over to the right hand side of Design Space, and under Material Size, make sure you have the correct paper setting. So I'm often switching between A4 and letter size paper depending on the material I'm using. My cardstock is 8.5 by 11, so I'm gonna select letter size. So let's press continue. And then click on Send Printer. I'm gonna leave the bleed on for this. We're also gonna turn on the system dialog box. So go ahead and switch that little toggle and then click on Print. Now the system dialog box will pop up, but it's normally hidden behind the Design Space application. So you may need to move your application aside a little bit, and there is our print box there. So I'm just gonna scroll down, and under Media and Quality, under Quality, I'm gonna change that from normal to best. So I'm gonna load some medium cardstock in my printer, and then we can press Print. Once our bookmarks are printed, we can go ahead and put that on our mat the same way it appears on our Design Space screen. Then we're gonna grab a laminate sheet. This one is from Tech Wrap, and it's really glittery and really sparkly and a lot of fun. But you'll notice this is A4 paper and this is letter size. So we've got a different size going on here. So I'm just gonna trim this up a little bit. You don't have to, you can just put it right on top if you wanted to, but I'm gonna trim it so it fits within my black registration marks. But sometimes some machines do have a difficult time reading the registration marks with a really glossy finish on top of them. So if you do cover those registration marks, you can always go ahead and put some matte Scotch tape on top. So a little trick to cut this to size is we can put this right between our registration marks here. And then I just have a dry erase marker here, and I'm just gonna mark where I'm gonna cut this with my paper trimmer. And now our sheet will fit nicely inside there. So we're just gonna peel some of the top of this laminate sheet back here. And I'm just gonna cut some of the top off here. And now we have a sticky edge. So I'm gonna start off by lining it up at the bottom and then press that sticky edge down. If you got any bubbles in there, make sure you push those out as well. And then fold it back and then gently press our laminate sheet down. And if you get any bubbles, you can smooth those out. I like to smooth them away from my design just to make sure I don't get bubbles in the design. I have a big one here I need to smooth out. And you can always use a squeegee as well to help you. Now, if you get a bubble on your design that you're like, I can't get that out, you can go grab your pin pen and poke at that little bubble. And sometimes that'll help get that air out to get the rest of that bubble out. Now that this is on, let's go set our material settings before we load our mat. So under base material, we're going to click on Browse All Material and type in cardstock. And we're going to choose the second one here, cardstock adhesive backed. And I find this setting works really well. So click on that and then click Done. And you'll notice under instruction number 3, it says Load Tools and Materials. So it's telling us to load our single scoring wheel, but if you're not using a single scoring wheel, you have a scoring stylus instead, you can click on Edit Tools and change that to the scoring stylus. I will be using the scoring wheel today. So let's load that scoring wheel simply by opening clamp B, taking out our blade, and inserting the scoring wheel. And then we can load our mat, and our Cricut will score our design, and then Design Space will prompt us to switch out our scoring wheel to our fine point blade so our machine can cut out our bookmarks. All right, and that took less than 3.5 minutes to get these scored and cut out. So let's flip our mat over, and we're gently going to peel our mat off of our bookmarks. And here are our 3 bookmarks. They turned out super cute, and you can see our score line right there. So this is going to be very easy to fold, and there we go. Now, all we have to do is add our magnets to it. Now, I have tested a number of different magnets so that you would know what works best. So I had some different magnets laying around at home that I wanted to try before I went out and bought any. So I have these ones, and they're really quite thick, and they don't have an adhesive backing on them, so you would need to use the glue gun to put them on. But I found when you're using them, you can see how thick that is. You really don't want to have one that thick, especially as a bookmark. It's just going to really add more thickness to your book. So these were a no-go. And then at home, I also had these really, really tiny magnets that are super strong. They just bounce out of my hand really easy. So when I put these on, I use hot glue to apply them. But the problem is these magnets were so strong that when I tried to pull the bookmark apart, my bookmarks started to rip. So these little powerful ones were a no-go as well. And then I tried these magnetic strips, and there is an adhesive backing on them. So I had made this cowboy boot bookmark earlier, and I use these strips, and it does work nicely. They click together really nice. They're still a little thick. I find it's really hard to get a nice straight cut with these. And the ends also curl up a little bit because this came in a roll. And it also doesn't look too pretty. So I decided to keep looking on my search for the perfect magnet. So then I found these little dot magnets. These are about 1 inch wide, and these are only 1/2 inch. And these are paper thin. So I applied these 1 inch magnets to a bookmark, and I put them on this one right here. And it's nice because it's paper thin, but it doesn't always close and stick too well. So the magnet wasn't that strong. Once in a while it does stick, but as soon as you put paper in between these 2 magnets, it doesn't stick too well. Now it does stick to my fridge okay, but I didn't think it was quite strong enough to use as a bookmark. So then I decided to get a magnetic sheet, and you can see I made a whole pile of magnets here, and I actually cut out this magnet sheet with my Cricut machine, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. Now the packaging that this magnetic sheet came with, it doesn't tell me how thick the magnet is. I want to say it's somewhere between 0.8 millimeters and 1 millimeter. So it is thicker than those paper thin ones I just showed you on here, but it's not as thick as some of the other magnets that I tried. So I decided to give this a go, and I found I got the best result with it. So here are some of the cutout magnets that I have, and you can see they stick together really nicely. So we're gonna stick these together and peel off the sticker backing here. And then you can go ahead and stick that on one side of your bookmark, press that down, and then we're gonna peel off this other sticker backing here. Make sure they're still lined up, and then close your bookmark and press down. So now we have our magnets on here, and these seem to work much better and they will work well in your book. So you may have to play around with different magnets before you find the right one. Here is another one I made with those same magnets, and it closes so nicely. Now, to cut this magnetic sheet with your Cricut, you're going to need to use your strong grip mat, and then I also use some masking tape just to hold it down on the mat. And then in Cricut Design Space, you're going to choose the setting Magnetic Sheet 0.6 millimeters. Now, this setting does 6 different passes, but I actually put the magnetic sheet through my machine 4 different times. So 4 times 6, we got 24. So I actually did 24 passes on these magnetic sheets. And I also use the deep point blade. Now, you don't have to cut out your own magnets. I have seen some nice 1-inch magnets on Amazon that look thicker than the ones that I purchased at the dollar store. So you can try those out for yourself and see if those work. I saw some that were 0.8 millimeters, and I think those ones should do the trick. I just haven't purchased those ones yet. So go ahead and play around with different magnets and see what works best for you. I hope you enjoyed today's project, and hopefully you'll no longer be using receipts as your bookmarks. If you're looking for more print and cut projects that you can do with your Cricut machine, I'll leave a few videos linked down below in the description that you can check out next. I hope to see you on more crafting adventures.